Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 6 of our My Hero Academia review podcast. If you didn't know, each and every week the two of us read through 2 volumes of the My Hero Academia manga, then sit down on this channel and review it. I am your host, Hoodie. That is my co-host, Zero, and this is Training Arc. If you're watching this as it goes up live on YouTube, then consider heading on over to patreon.com/KatoYT and pledging a couple bucks to get the next episode early. Of course, every episode we like to throw a question out there for you all to discuss. Last week we asked you, so far, what has been your favorite fight? If you want to hear our answers, head on over to the previous episode this week. The question of the week is, what are your UA mole theories? Now, I don't want to get too much into why I did this, but let's just say, no spoilers here for stuff that comes on later, because I know, some people that watch aren't that much further ahead than us, just because, anime only stuff. So, there was some revelations about some character, maybe related to this, maybe not related to this, and I thought, hey, you know what, let's just talk about some mole stuff. Maybe it would have been better last week, but oh well, what are we gonna do? So, what are your UA mole theories? We'll give you our answers at the end of the video. Let us know yours in the comment section below. And if you are going to talk about things that beyond the anime, then put a spoiler alert at the top of your comment, just so other commenters don't get spoiled. Now, before we start, we did take a week off last week. Zero, do you want to explain why that happened?
Well, as you fine folks at home can see, this is clearly a different setting. I'm at college now, and, you might think bringing your microphone to college would be the smart thing for a YouTuber to do, but I chose to just sort of leave it at home so that Hoodie would have to bring it back to me.
And bring it back I did. It was a long journey. Last night we did it. I meant to record. Okay, let me tell you guys what the plan was, because I think it was a great plan, but I just was an idiot and messed it up. So I was thinking, you know what? We took a week off. I got to do this road trip. It's going to be like a six maybe longer hour road trip. What if I just vlog the entire thing, make that a video, and we call it Filler Arc? Now, I thought that was a genius idea. You gave the approval. I said, let's do it. And then I just forgot. I just forgot to film the entire thing. But I did make the trip last night. Left at around 10:30, got home around 4 a.m. But you got your mic, so mission accomplished. Yep. But we are back now, and as we are, let's just hit them with a brief summary of the volumes read. We read through 2 volumes, of course, but let's just start off with the first one because they're pretty different. The first one being, I believe it is called Nightmare at Camino, and it is specifically the One for All versus All for One fight. Hit us with a brief summary, Zero.
So, where we left off, the heroes had basically coordinated a raid against the League of Villains headquarters, and All for One was like, hey, you can't go locking up my boy. So he steps in, basically teleports all the villains away, and tries to save Shigaraki. But, he's like, well, I'm not just gonna let you get away, you're bad guys. So he chases him down. They're still trying to kidnap Bakugo, and he's sort of doing Bakugo stuff, yelling "fuck you," blowing everything up.
Yeah, and doing Classic. Well. I mean, he's fighting. He's fighting 4 villains, and he's doing it. And also, I just want to give a quick shout out to all. I fucking hate. I get it. Like One for All for One. I get it. It's clever, but fuck you. I want to give a quick shout out to All for One, because I feel like at least me, I got a different version of this character than I anticipated that I would get. I thought, okay, we see this guy, he's sort of the mastermind behind it all. I thought we would be introduced to a character that is manipulating, Shigaraki. I thought he would be like, oh, I'm using Shigaraki to get what I want, which is true. That is what he's doing. But it also, it did genuinely feel like out of some sort of...
He kind of cares about him.
Yeah, in like a twisted way. It does feel like care. So I just want to give a quick shout out to that. It is not what I anticipated that character to be, but I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, he basically had to sacrifice his freedom to ensure Shigaraki's, and that's what he did. Like, he didn't even hesitate.
I'm getting a phone call from Russia right now. I'm gonna answer it. Hello?
It's Putin.
Okay, no answer. Alright, anyways. Okay, so yeah, they're here, they start fighting. What else?
So while they're there, Deku and his boys, they're like, ah, shit, we really dug ourselves in a hole this time, huh? And they're like, okay, well, what do we do? How do we save Bakugo? How do we get out of here? And Deku, you know, the boy genius, he's like,
Big brain.
it's simple. We'll just break this wall, we'll make a big ice ramp, and then we'll just fly away.
I'll be honest, I think I need to see this one animated, because even, like, he explained it, and I kind of get what was happening, but I don't know, maybe it didn't quite look... It didn't visually portray itself very well, in my opinion. I still feel like I'm not quite sure how this whole thing worked, but I'm going to watch the anime soon, because, you know, just to touch on some other stuff that we're going to be talking about later. I want to see this fight animated, so I'm going to watch this, and I'm hoping that it is a lot cooler in the anime, because as I read it right now, I kind of got it, but I kind of didn't, and I'm hoping that it's just a lot more clear. And also, from my understanding, there is a couple more shots added in the anime.
Yeah, there's the scene in the anime where Bakugo, he's like, sees them, and he, like, you know, blows up, jumps up to them, grabs Kirishima's hand, and that sequence in the anime was really fucking cool.
Yeah.
But, I don't know, I watched it recently, and I feel like, as far as the actual plan that Deku puts forth, probably not going to be much, you know, more easy to parse in the animation, but
Maybe.
overall, I think it's a pretty good encounter. And as we said, they save Bakugo from the League of Villains, and basically All Might and All for One are trying to they're fighting, and All for One's like, well, I guess I'll just get all of my people out of here since you already got all of yours out. It's only fair.
We don't need to let's not get too detailed into this fight, because there are a lot of things to talk about.
That's
one
true.
of the okay, I have this at the top of my notes because I just want to get this out of the way. But we're gonna talk about the fight. But first, just as an update, last week I did ask you for, like, the resulting the hero Ragdoll, member of the Wild Wild Pussycats, she was seemingly made into a Nomu, or they were trying to, but they didn't finish it. So they get her just in time. I asked you if that character lived. You said you didn't know. Update is that she did live.
Yeah.
She is alive, but she is quirkless. So just an update to that. Sad indeed, but she did live, so good for her. Now, let's go into this fight a little bit. So, one of the big things, it's a fairly simple fight, which is not a bad thing. It is fairly, just despite all of the powers that One for All or All for One has, he just makes a big hand, and you got All Might's big hand, and they just punch it out. But there are some...
What he really needs is Kendo's quirk. Big fist.
It was like, he was really combining so many quirks that just ended up being a big hand. He's like, I'm going to combine this, like, wind twisting quirk, and then this power augmentation quirk, and then big hand. And they just punch it out. I get it. I've seen people explain, like, yes, it is maybe not the most efficient, and maybe if he did something else, he could have won, but, like, the importance of basically emulating All Might's fighting style and beating him would have equated to a very much, like, larger societal victory for, like, his ideology. So I get that, and so I have no complaints about that. But I will say, this fight, I'm not going to say it was bad. No, by no means will I say it was bad. I will say I was a little disappointed, because when we ended off last week, I said those two volumes were like a breath of fresh air for me, and I was so much looking forward to reading the next one. I thought we were really going to be on the up and up, and we were. I won't say this was. I didn't like this first volume more than the previous volumes. And how should I phrase this? There are certain elements of this fight that I just did not really enjoy as much as I think it could have, I could have. So one of them is going to be, I'm not 100% convinced that this fight should have even happened right now. So you had me write down in your notes, did My Hero Academia have the Boruto problem, which would be like that Naruto just needs to leave? You know, like this story can't work with this, you know, towering figure of like overpowered, you know, level just hovering over everyone. And by having this fight and All Might eventually losing his powers because of it, does that solve this problem? And you mentioned Boruto, but I'm more akin to comparing this to Naruto in the sense of the Jiraiya versus Pain fight, which came a lot later. You know, like that came towards the tail end of, well, not the tail end, but it came halfway through the second series. You know, so this one, if you had told me that like eventually All Might is gonna fight All for One, I like, sure, I totally buy that. I wouldn't have anticipated it coming this early, and then I also wouldn't have anticipated it playing out the way it did in the aftermath with, like, you know, the fact that All Might doesn't die. You know, I don't see why he's still alive. Like, I get in the moment everything he said about, you know, I need to be there to raise Deku. I need to continue to be his teacher and mentor. I get that. And I also understand why that might be good for the narrative. But if we had put this fight later on, then he could have been done with mentoring Deku and then thus could have died in this fight, which I think would have hit really, really hard. So there's, you know, there's that whole element that didn't quite make sense to me. Like, I'm not quite seeing why this needed to happen the way it did. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it, in part, is because of, I feel like Horikoshi is probably aware of the fact that, if, you know, All Might and All for One are sort of lurking in the background, then it's sort of like, it takes some of the spotlight away from our boy Deku and, you know, to another extent, our boy Tomura. And I don't necessarily disagree with the idea of removing these two characters from play, but if I'm honest, I don't think it actually solves the problem, because it's not as though now that All Might is gone, there are no top heroes. Like, obviously, there are still, like, you're not actually getting rid of Naruto in this analogy. That he's still there, kind of, because the Hero Society is still there, and the heroes will be the ones to take care of all the biggest problems that the characters have to face.
Well, an apt comparison would be like, even if getting rid of All Might is getting rid of Naruto, sure, but you still have Sasuke in Endeavor. You know, like, you still have the second huge character that is going to lead to the same problem that you already had. So, and on top of that, the fact that, you know, I don't know what happens later on in the story, you know, other than brief things that I've heard about, but One for All God fucking damn it.
This is gonna happen a lot, huh?
All for One is still alive. You know, like, he is functioning. You know, he didn't lose his powers. You know, he is perfectly, like, he is locked away, and, you know, unless, like, I think it would be a bit of a red herring for him to never come back. You know, like, if he never
would be odd.
If he never came back, then they should have just killed him. So the fact that he's still alive, locked away, means that, you know, this guy's coming back at some point. So, you know, while All Might might have lost his powers, One for All.
All for One.
All for One is, you know, still potentially active. So I don't think this. I think this led to a lot of people's favorite fight, and I'm fully prepared. I already made the thumbnail for this video, so I had to, like, skim the fight on Crunchyroll just to grab a screenshot, and I already can see that I'm going to like this fight when I watch it. You know, when I get to the anime and I watch this animated with the music, I'm going to probably cry at the end. I am sure. But, you know, I can congratulate them for doing that, but I don't think that necessarily makes it the right choice. You know, you could have put this fight 100 episodes later, still make me cry, and then also just be better for the narrative, you know? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see where you're getting at. Honestly, I don't know, because I don't like. I like this fight. I like the idea that Shigaraki's not going to be able to depend on All for One to make his plans work, and that Hero Society is going to have to start working without All Might. But I do sort of agree with the sentiment that it may have sort of come too soon, and I feel like part of that was to like catch us off guard. But
yeah, I think I could be convinced that this was the right choice. You know, I'm not married to the idea that this has to mirror the Jiraiya pain fight and be that late into the series. We had I didn't like take a screenshot or anything, so I can't read it, but we had Mathwa's comment on the last video about my complaints towards the muscular fight and how I didn't think that was very good for Deku's character arc, and he put up a good argument. So I in that same respect, I am open to being convinced here, just off of my perception. I don't necessarily think it was. I don't necessarily think it was a good idea, but I could be convinced otherwise. The other aspect of this fight that left me a little bit wanting was everything we got about Nana Shimura. I thought, well, one, let me say this: I am in love with this character. She's so beautiful. But
well, yes.
That aside, it felt like this was the moment that I was expecting to learn who this person was. Knowing that knowing that like. Just from the grapevine of hearing things, knowing that she was name dropped in this fight, and that like her history with her grandson, or not necessarily with her grandson, but the fact that her grandson is Shigaraki, knowing that all gets dropped in this fight, I was expecting to come out of it knowing who this character was and what her personality was like and who she, how she acted, and we got glimpses of it. We had conversation pieces. She talked to All Might a little bit. She talked to Gran Torino a little bit, and we could get glimpses of her personality through that. But I still felt like we got so little. And
yeah,
why I think that's a problem is because it was so much of an impact on All Might in this fight. It was so huge that it like invigorated a lot of All Might's drive, and why he was able to win this fight was through the idea of thinking about her legacy and trying to maintain that legacy and pass it on to Deku. And for me to not be able to empathize with it, in the sense that like I can't really put myself in his shoes because I don't like. So to compare it to Naruto again, at the end of Naruto, when Naruto fights Sasuke for the last time, and they're about to clash, and they both have the Chidori and the Rasengan up, and then you see like Jiraiya putting his hand on Naruto's hand, and then Kakashi and I forget who exactly else, and then you see Sasuke and Itachi puts his hand on Sasuke's hand, and it was a very similar moment to this where Nana puts something in All Might's hand, and that gives him the strength to get the last punch in. It was a very similar moment, except in Naruto, it was like when Itachi touches Sasuke, I'm like, I know Itachi. I love Itachi. I know that he loved his brother. And because I experienced that and I knew this character so well, that had a really large emotional impact. But that didn't happen here because, it happened in a very raw sense. And I don't think it was a complete failure, but I just don't think it hit the heights that it perhaps wanted to hit and that it could have hit. So that is just another example of things that could have been better had this come a little later and had we already learned a little bit more about this Nana Shimura character.
I do agree that it was sort of underwhelming how like little more of Nana we got to learn, because honestly I don't really see a space in the rest of the series where we can learn about Nana, which sort of leads me to believe that we're just not going to, because she didn't really know Shigaraki.
Yeah.
I guess All Might is still around, but like he already had his big climactic moment. I do assume he's gonna probably like have another big climactic moment where he's like face to face with All for One or Shigaraki again.
All Might will die at some point. Just reasonably speaking, he's gonna have to die at some point. So in that death, maybe we get it then, or maybe Gran Torino. Who knows? But it's hard. It's hard to say. It does feel like it should have just been here. I don't know if that was just poor planning or I don't know. I will say
maybe he just didn't want to like plug it too like heavily with flashbacks.
I don't know. This is like one of those times where I feel like I wouldn't have even hated like this fight to have stopped in the middle. Maybe this is dumb, but like in theory, I don't hate the idea that this fight stops in the middle and we have one episode based on Nana. In theory, that sounds fine to me. In practice, I might have been a little annoyed by that, but something in that regards, I feel like I could have gotten on board with. And, you know, one of the things that really bothers me about that is when I first learned, you know, when someone first told me, or I heard somewhere or read somewhere that Shigaraki was the grandson of Nana Shimura, I was like, that is genius. That is like a really, really genius character idea, you know? And I thought, I cannot wait to see how this plays out. And, you know, having saw it play out, I'm just a little disappointed. I thought concept was so good. Execution was fine, but I just wanted better. Sad. All right. Well, that's enough of unless you have more complaints about the fight, but I would like to talk about some moments that we did like. You know, it wasn't all bad. I do think the fight was good. I'll start us off with, you know, maybe this says something about the fight, but actually a lot of my favorite moments were not All Might stuff and not like... So to start it off, I thought Best Jeanist, I don't know if he died either. I don't know if that was like his death or he got just fucked up.
No, he's fine.
Okay. So I thought like him saving everyone and then attacking All For One, I thought that was pretty good. I really liked the moment with Mount Lady where she like secures the escape for Bakugo by like turning really big right when the villains were about to chase after, and then, you know, and then Kamui just
blocks it with her face,
and then Kamui, that's the old Haikyuu Hinata method of blocking, and then Kamui Woods comes in and says like, you know, hey, good job. And because I thought that was like really reassuring for this character who we are introduced to as a gag character. You know, in the first episode, she's, you know, the nice to meet your acquaintance thing. And then even Kamui Woods, in extension, by like, you could look at these characters in the first episode and just assume these are random characters thrown in, you know, just for the sake of having a cool fight scene at the beginning. And that would have been fine. I think that is fine. But the fact that these characters come back and then like actually serve a purpose, and that like Mount Lady actually seems to be a good character, like an interesting, you know, rounded personality. I have a lot of appreciation for that. What are some of your favorite moments of the fight?
Honestly, I'm really like a big All For One fan because he's so cool. Like, he's kind of twisted, and he's obviously aware of it, but he doesn't really let you take the moral high ground. You know, he's like, well, you hate me because I killed your master, but, I mean, think of all my comrades that you killed. Mm-hmm. And like you said, his relationship with Shigaraki, where it's like, clearly he's manipulating this kid, but at the same time, he also, like, genuinely seems to care for him at times. Yeah, there's a lot going on with All For One that I like.
He's an interesting guy, and you know, while I would have been fine with him dying, now that he is alive, I am, you know, I do think there is now possibility of seeing him come back in an interesting way. I don't necessarily know thematically if that's good for like the whole symbol idea that's so prevalent in this show, for him to still be alive and to come back. But, you know, hey, if he comes back and has a cool showing, cool. You know, it's the same thing I feel about Stain, where it's like, I was perfectly fine with Stain having died when I thought he died, you know, and then, you know, I was wrong, and he's alive, and we saw that in this volume that he's being held. But I felt like the narrative purpose that he fulfilled was fulfilled, you know, with Stain, and then I also think the same thing with All For One. But now that we still have them alive, I guess I will take the silver lining here and just, you know, sure. I'll take it. Whatever. Fine. If you make it something cool, then I'll forgive you, Horikoshi. Basically, the other big, to stay in line with my favorite moments, being, you know, the non-All Might stuff, is actually this is my favorite moment of the entire fight, was Endeavor. You know, coming in, seeing All Might, how weak he was and how fucked up his body was, and just saying, All Might, what the fuck is wrong with your body? And then, you know, that's funny in its own right. And, you know, him helping is cool in its own right. But then there was the moment where he says, you know, I forget the exact quote, but it's like, think of all of the things I did to try to catch up to you. And it has like panels of you know, Todoroki's mom and then Todoroki, and it's like
Yeah.
and he's like, all for you to be this weak, you know. It's like, I don't know, that really humanized Endeavor to me, you know. That really made me feel like, wow, Endeavor really just wants to beat this guy, you know. Like, it is 100% just drive to be better, you know. All the things, all the horrific things he did to Todoroki's mom and to Todoroki and to all of his children, it is just for this goal. And do I think it was a good choice? No. Would I you know, reprimand a person for doing this? Sure. But I get it, you know. Like, I understand, you know. I understand him, and I understand, I could understand how someone like that must feel in that moment, you know, to think about all the work that you put in only to see that maybe it was for nothing, or, you know, maybe not nothing, but I don't know. It was like a false idol of sorts.
I'm definitely getting some Bakugo vibes from Endeavor. Like, he's spent his whole life trying to be the best, and even when he finally gets up to that pinnacle, like, I'm gonna be the number one hero, he's like, well, this fucking sucks. He's like, I didn't get here on my own. My opponent or my opposition had to become weaker. So, like, what's even the point?
Yeah, I don't. Go ahead.
I think it's a cool character aspect in Bakugo, and I'm interested in seeing, like, if this actually like thematically means anything as far as, like, Bakugo and Todoroki's relationship.
Let me just say that Endeavor is a character I have my eyes on. You know, I'm looking forward to see what we got with this guy.
He's got some good stuff.
All right, I think that's, unless you have any more thoughts, I think that covers everything I have to say about the All Might fight.
I think I'm good too.
All right, then after that, we go into some dorm stuff that, well, actually, okay, so I don't want to talk about the dorms, but before the dorms, we get the series of house visits to propose the dorm idea, where Aizawa and All Might, now depowered, go around to all the students and pitches the idea, surprisingly getting everyone on board, despite the fact that, you know,
they've had some real problems lately.
In the 2 short months of them being there have been multiple attacks. A student has gotten kidnapped. And, Deku has nearly died.
Not looking good.
So it's a pretty rough one. But luckily, everyone seems to be in on the idea, so it worked. But let's talk about. I personally enjoyed the stuff with Deku's mom a lot. I did not expect to have this happen. I did not really. There's a lot of things I didn't expect in that scene. You know, the fact that Deku's mom was like, "No, I'm sorry, but I can't let you do this," and then putting up a good argument, and me being like, you know what, maybe she's right, and then Deku to run to his room and be like, you know what, Mom, you are right. I'm gonna drop out of UA. So I was like,
on second thought, that school kind of blows. So
now that All Might's done, I'm done too. So that series of events surprised me, but then, you know, All Might pulls it back around and, you know, has a touching little speech about, you know, taking care of Deku and, you know, just begging for him to go back to school at UA. I thought all of that was very pleasant. I very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like she's been pretty neglected up to this point in the story. Like, every line of dialogue she's had basically since Deku started high school has just been, oh my god, I was so worried.
Yeah,
and
she's basically
Deku's just like, yeah, okay, Mom.
She's basically just a cutaway gag. You know, it's like something crazy happens to Deku, cut to Deku's mom crying. You know, that's basically all she is at this point. Anything?
Yeah, so when she says you can't go back to UA, it's pretty interesting because, like, even if Deku wasn't thinking about her, it shows the mangaka was.
But the thing is, you know, you always got the idea, at least I did, always got the idea that there was going to be something with Deku's mom. You know, like, the fact that she had a different, like, character design earlier, where she was, you know, skinny and, you know, I guess basically just skinny, and then, you know, cut to where Deku is in current day and she's, you know, gained weight. That clearly, like, that's not just like a random thing that happens. Like, that clearly is intentional. It's meant to tell us something, and, you know, it just sort of didn't really amount to anything until, a lot of people will say that. I forget who made this video. I want to say it was like Zen Huxtable, maybe, made a video defending this because a lot of people say that she doesn't look as attractive now. So he was like, but this clearly indicates that like, her care it plays on how much of a caring mother she is. I'm not going to recycle his arguments. If you want to see his video, go fucking find it.
It may or may not have been Zen Huxtable.
Look up Deku's mom hot or something. I'm sure that'll pull it up.
You just Google it, actually.
Yeah. So there's all that, and I expected something to play into it. It has not played into it now until now we are officially getting Deku's mom as a character. So cool stuff. Big like on the Deku's mom stuff. Anything else you want to say about that?
I think it's cool that like she doesn't want Deku to be a hero because of the danger it presents, and while that's obviously not the most original point, it does present some interesting opportunities, like narratively moving forward. And I also like that Deku doesn't like try to fight her on the UA stance. He's like, "Look, I can just be a hero," but All Might's like, "No, you need UA."
Surprisingly, something we learned in the next volume is that, obviously other schools have hero training courses, but like there are just actually other schools, like it does not just have to be UA. There is like an equally good school on the other side.
Yeah.
But okay, so we had Deku's mom. We also got a little, on the other side of the coin, we got Mitsuki Bakugo, which is Bakugo's mom. And with everything happening to Bakugo, All Might goes into this, and Aizawa goes into this expecting, to be berated for everything that happens. But surprisingly, she is very much like probably the most willing of everyone that we saw, the most willing to send Bakugo off, send their kid off to this dorm school. And that, I don't necessarily know if I'd call it...
He got kidnapped last week.
Yeah. And we got an interesting perspective, which is a look into why Bakugo acts the way he does. And it has a lot to do with, abuse. And whether mental or physical, we could discuss the validity of that claim. But it very clearly, in my mind, does play a factor into Bakugo. The fact that she does say that you were weak and that's why you got kidnapped does play into who he is as a character. The fact that, he has that mindset drives him to need to be stronger. And then also she talks about some stuff about how growing up he was always told he was a genius and stuff, and how she really enjoys that at UA he's basically getting the shit beaten out of him and knocked down a peg. So we could talk about various facets of this conversation that she has with All Might and Aizawa, but the big conversation is probably about is she abusive? What are your thoughts on that?
I think she forgave UA because, everyone recognizes Bakugo's talents and his obvious character flaws, but Aizawa recognizes his, personal virtues. He had that interview that she talks about where he said, Bakugo's trying to be number one hero harder than anyone else, and if the villains thought that gave them an opportunity, then they're fucking idiots.
Yeah.
And
quote.
He said that at a press conference. We need to be professional here, guys. And I think for her to recognize this about Aizawa, she has to recognize Bakugo's virtues. So I don't think it's the case that she's a hellish mom who's always shitting on him. I think she knows that he has potential, and she is disappointed by the direction he's going now because Bakugo is a self-centered bully, and she's trying to do what's best for him by scolding him. But, she's obviously pretty callous, and she's hitting him multiple times. So that's pretty abusive.
Just to give the background, actually, we've had this conversation before, not on air, but we've had this conversation with other people about whether or not she's abusive. And I actually am willing to forgive the hitting thing. I think that's just the argument I made was that, like, in the nature of anime, of like heightened reality, that hitting her kid is not really hitting her kid. It's just to indicate, the sort of stubborn bully mom nature that she is. So I wouldn't call her physically abusive. I don't think it's that big of a deal. But I will say that while you are right that it's coming from a good place, that her, trying to berate him to make him better is what's happening. It is still making the way she treats Bakugo, whether good intentioned or not, is still making Bakugo into this monster that he is, So, and listen, this is not, this is not to say that Bakugo is a bad character or that his mom's a bad character. I think it'd be really weird to say.
They're just both bad people.
Yeah, I mean, you could be a bad person and be a good character. So I think I do take it as very verbally abusive, well-intentioned. So, you said, like, hellish mom. I don't think she is, like, get over here, you little shit, and then slaps him in the face type of abusive. I just think she unknowingly feeds into a type of attitude that he currently has that is unhealthy.
Yeah, our friend that we've discussed this with before made a good case that Mitsuki probably has instilled at least a few of Bakugo's insecurities in him, but I don't know. I think, like, looking at the actual scene, everything she says that's, like, negative about Bakugo is just true.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean you say it.
Yeah, maybe I'm a bad parent, too.
And, of course, the other aspect to this, Bakugo has a dad. Isn't that crazy?
Does he, though?
There certainly was a man there. Seemed not like him, but
he had the hair. So,
all right. Then from there we go into the dorm stuff, and that's basically not filler, but it's basically just hey, let's have some fun. I don't really have any thoughts on that. I assume you don't either.
It was. I like the idea of not just going back to the status quo. Like, there was a little bit of a conversation to be had there about the conflicts of Class 1A, like, in the previous arc, when they were, like, having that discussion about, should we go save Bakugo? Well, who's going on the road trip? And everyone was like, well, maybe you guys shouldn't. But they just did anyway. Mm-hmm. And I like the fact that they had like a conversation about that to sort of air the beef.
So here's what I'll say. I liked when Aizawa was like, you were all complicit, and if this was like a different situation, you'd all be expelled. I like that, but this is gonna sound weird, but was the conversation with Tsuyu a little too healthy? It was like, hey, I just wanted to let you guys know that it made me really uncomfortable the way you guys acted. And, I just really like you guys as friends. And I just wish we could be good friends. I was like, if this was real life, Tsuyu, good on you. You are a very healthy individual. Communication is key. But this is a story. And I just kind of want to, it just felt like a little too soft for my liking, maybe.
It was wrapped up in a pretty neat little bow, and I would have liked to see some tensions sort of, continue over from this arc, but I don't know. I think it has to do with Tsuyu's personal characterization. She's always been described as the emotionally strong one. And
we know friends mean a lot to her because of the little 10-page like spin-off manga that we got in the middle of
fucking Habuko.
All right.
Still the best character.
That's enough about the dorms. Let's move on. All right, that was volume 1. Now volume 2, provisional license exams. Hit us with a brief summary of that shit.
Okay.
But like good shit. Not bad shit.
Class 1A, first they got to start working on their super moves. Mm-hmm. Everyone, they basically put all the kids in a big pit, and they're like, here, just use your quirks, and if you get a few super moves, that'd be cool too.
I think this is,
Bakugo.
to be honest, I think this is a faulty concept. Like the idea of super moves, because like it only works for some quirks. You know, like not everyone can have a super move. You know, like what is Ojiro
what
supposed to
you
do?
think.
What is Ojiro's super move? He has a tail.
He fucking uses tail whip. I don't.
That's just a move. That's a normal move.
Yeah, I guess.
I just go ahead.
We actually still don't have the answer for what Ojiro's super move ended up being.
I'm just saying it's a little weird. I don't get why this is such a huge deal. It seems gimmicky. I don't really know why they would teach this. I think it would be fine if like okay, if super move class was the equivalent of like art class, which is like an optional thing that you could take, then sure, you know, someone like Bakugo and Deku and, you know, whatever, they could all go to their super move class and learn something cool, but then, you know, Momo and Ojiro can be like, I'm gonna do something more practical with my time.
Yeah, for those two, it does seem like they pretty much just have to focus on improving their actual quirk. But, I mean, the super moves we did get were pretty cool. And it seems like super moves are pretty much just using your quirk in a specific way while saying a cool phrase anyway.
Well, because they specifically gave the example of Kamui Woods and said, like, that thing he did at the invasion thing was his super move, where it's like, he just grabbed people. Like, he just grabbed people with his arms. I mean, it was cool.
Yeah.
I guess. All right.
Yeah.
Super moves, what else?
After that, they actually do go to the the provisional license exam, and we find out there was a student that UA wanted even more than Todoroki by the name of Inasa, or however you pronounce it.
Actually, it's pronounced Tanaka, and he's from Haikyuu, and this is a really weird crossover event that they decided to do.
He does look way too much like Tanaka, but like, if Tanaka was fucking ripped, you know? And they also introduced the rival school of Shiketsu.
Yep.
And Nice Joke? Is that the hero name?
Oh, yeah, it was like she had like a pirate costume on. That was really dumb. I do not like her.
She just kept flirting with our boy Eraserhead, which I really liked.
Well, if they just made a character that was like super into Eraserhead, I would be fine with that. Like, that sounds like fun. But like this quirk and the way she's dressed and like, I don't know, I just don't like this character very much.
It does seem weird for like a hero idea that her quirk is just she makes people laugh really hard.
Yeah, like if they just made another character, like they just had a different character with her own quirk and with a cool outfit, and then she was just like, Aizawa, it's been so long, you know, let's go on a date or something. And like, look at this girl. That's cute. But then they just really amped it up to a fucking 13, and I don't know why.
Well, that's what this show does, man.
All right, so now what?
So we meet Shiketsu. We also meet Ketsu Betsu.
I'm not gonna. I don't. I barely remember Deku's name.
True shit. But yeah, they get in the exam. They find out they're gonna need to put 3 targets on their own body. And they're going to have 6 balls, and to pass, they need to take out 2 people by hitting the third target with, their balls. Mm-hmm. And that's how you pass. And out of, 1,540 students or whatever, only 100 will get to pass.
Which is a lot smaller than they anticipated. They were told 50-50. This is...
Yeah, that's a pretty fucking steep cutoff.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus Christ. But, narrative stakes or whatever. So, we find out about something called the UA crushing, which Aizawa just refuses to tell his students about because he's an asshole.
Well, Deku... he's basically just like, well, listen, if they're as good as I think they are, then they could take any challenge. And it's like, yeah, I guess. Well, like, by that same logic, why teach them at all?
Yeah, like... You guys want to learn special moves? Well, if you're good enough, you'll just have one.
Yeah.
Ida has a special move, so fuck you, kids. But yeah, they're thrown into the pit. Deku realizes that they're probably gonna get targeted anyway because the fucking UA Sports Festival was such a big deal, and lo and behold, exactly that happens. As soon as they get in the exam, everyone's throwing their fucking balls at them.
I want to fast forward for a second because I just remembered a moment and I don't want to forget it. There's a little later on, so we have the UA crushing right away, and then we go and eventually the UA students team up, but then they get split up, and Deku gets by himself, and then suddenly Ochako shows up and he needs to go save Ochako, and then he does, and then as he's like, all right, here's the plan, Ochako, and he's looking away, Ochako goes to put a ball on him, and it's actually not Ochako, it's this girl Cammy from a different school, and she has like a transformation quirk. But before that was revealed, I thought that was just Ochako, and I was like, good for her. You know, like the fact that like UA's teaming up, I get why they're doing it, but like it's a fucking,
you need those points.
Yeah, it's a dog eat dog world, you know? Get the fucking win.
Yeah, it's a dog eat dog world.
Let's go ahead.
Bakugo and Todoroki both go off on their own. Kirishima and Kaminari trail off after Bakugo, and Todoroki just does his own shit.
We got a great.
Aside from that,
we got a great moment with Kaminari.
Oh, I actually really liked how they were like sort of building up his new move, because they're like, he said something dumb like, "Oh, I'm gonna make a lightning sword." And they're like, "Yeah, sure you are, kid." But then, then when Deku comes back with his new costume, he's like, "So Deku, you want to see this new move I've been working on?" They're like, "Yeah, sure." Then they cut him off. He never gets to do it. So we get to see it for the first time.
Yeah, we get to see it, and he pulls off a cool pose, and he's got the glasses on, and I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, Kaminari, I'm glad they're finally letting him do stuff instead of just having to like shoot out all of his power at once and then turn into an idiot.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of when the characters do things. It's a real good aspect of the story for me.
Definitely better than when they're not.
Yeah.
I'll say that much.
Yeah. All right, what else?
So, Bakugo, he meets this other asshole who thinks he's better than everyone, and basically his group faces off against that one kid who's from Shiketsu. He has a pretty interesting quirk, actually. Like, that was the first time I think I've seen a quirk, and I was like, I would never have come up with that quirk idea.
Yeah.
You know?
Definitely abstract. In a good way. I do think it was a good quirk, or like an interesting quirk.
Yeah, kind of gross, but
yeah, very gross.
Cool.
Incredibly gross.
Hagakure learned Solar Flare. Did you notice that?
Yeah, that's we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I said that like her ability, from what I understand, is actually not just invisibility. It is light manipulation.
Yeah, and she actually uses it like offensively, which is like, holy shit, this is gonna be the coolest character now.
Or not.
So you might think.
Yeah, maybe not.
I guess the fact that I didn't know about that when we talked about it a few episodes ago probably tells you how important she is.
Yeah.
So, fast forward in the exam a little bit. The first guy to pass is that Inasa guy who literally knocks out 120 people at once. And then he's like, oh yeah, I passed.
What's his... quick clarification on his quirk. Is it just wind manipulation?
Yeah, he's basically like as strong with wind as Endeavor is with fire.
That's what I was... See, this is the thing I was thinking about when I was doing this. I was like, when I was reading this, I was like, there's a lot of interesting quirks here, and depending on the quirk, you have a lot of like potential. But these elemental quirks really are where it's at. Like that is just there is just too much like potential with an elemental quirk, because we talked a little bit about Bakugo in an earlier episode where I was like, this has a cap on how good it can get. Like without turning his bombs into like nuclear explosions. Like minus that, he is pretty much, they're going to get a little stronger than where they are now, but like his big claim to fame as a hero is going to have to be smart tactical fighting, and the bombs are just going to complement that. As for Todoroki in like Endeavor, it's just like they got some fucking really good flames going on, man. You know, like, and,
They got those flames.
and you know, you see this guy with the wind quirk, and it's like, yeah, that's really strong. I mean, he just fucking took out 120 people with one swing. You know, it's just,
Yeah.
And then you see someone like with Ojiro, and he just has a fucking tail. It's like, what the fuck am I gonna do?
Yeah, it's like you must really be asking yourself, like, what am I even doing here? Like, how did I get in this school? And there was another guy who basically had like an earthquake quirk. At first, I
Yeah.
thought he was just an earthbender.
Well,
So I was
let's
like,
let's
okay.
hold on that, because I do want to talk about him a little later. So basically,
cool.
just to wrap up the provisionals, everyone from UA passes. There's some stuff with other characters that we will talk about.
Yeah, they all passed the first exam.
Yeah, and then the end of this volume is moving into the second exam, but we don't. It cuts off there. So with what we have now, any standouts for the new characters that we were introduced? You know, we got a lot of new people from this new school, and we got a lot of people from this like second UA, where it's like second place to them, and then we got some people from a different school that I think, unless I'm wrong about that, but any standouts for you? Obviously, you know, Tanaka from Haikyuu, big ups to him. I thought I'm very excited for this character. One thing that we didn't bring up was that yes, UA wanted him. Yes, he's not at UA. He still really loves UA. So there's clearly some, you know, intrigue
There's
about
some
like
conflict.
yeah, why he didn't go. You know, I'm interested to see what happens there, and I'm interested to see. You know, he seems very, you know, boisterous and happy, and then he still gave like a weird side eye to Todoroki. So, you know, I'm very interested to see how this plays out. I don't know. One of the things I'm worried about is that we won't find out, or at least it will take a long time. Because the thing is, while I very much am interested in him, there are also I'm still waiting on Class B characters. You know, like I'm also very much interested in
Yeah.
some of Class B, and you know, I'm not really sure where we're gonna find time for all these new characters that he's introducing. And then the other standout for me was the Earthquake dude. You know, I don't know his name, but he gave me some. To speak of Class B, he gave me some strong, you know, vibes off of that like blonde guy who had the power to steal other quirks.
Monoma.
Yeah, like he sort of seemed like that sort of clever leader type who you kind of look down on, like they kind of look like bland, so you don't really give them too much attention, but they're smart and they could like manipulate the battlefield to their liking, manipulate people to their liking. So you know, while I don't remember his name, you know, much like the blonde guy, I am interested in him. Any standouts for you?
I mean, I think his name's Shindo or something. Inasa and Shindo, definitely the two most interesting characters for me. I'm trying to remember
Well,
who
there was
I did like the Shiketsu guy that Bakugo fought.
yeah, he was interesting, but there was also Cammy was introduced in this volume.
Yeah.
So cool. She's cool, I guess.
There was like it was when I first read this, I was like really curious about why she was like so interested in Deku. Like, he didn't even place that high in the sports festival. Like, shouldn't
you know,
you be tracking down Todoroki or someone?
everyone's interested in Deku. You know,
Of course,
that is one of the
every
themes.
hot girl.
Yeah, because we also got the Hatsumi stuff. There's a little bit of a harem
Yeah.
stuff going on, which is weird, but whatever.
Yeah, because this is just like some fucking scrawny ass nerd.
They're kind of laying on the Ochako stuff a little thick, to be honest. Like I don't mind.
Yeah.
I don't mind them. This being the relationship, you know, I don't mind that eventually we will get to this, and I don't mind sometimes it being referenced. Like there was a scene where, or there was a panel where Ochako is looking out the window. She's like floating upside down. Okay, so it starts off with Mina being like, "Oh my God, do you like a boy?" And I didn't really like that. But then it leads to her looking out the window and seeing Deku. And that one panel, or like one or two panels, I was like, I like that. I just don't like the
Yeah.
I don't like the naval laser boy. I don't know why I can't pronounce it. Aoyama. Him being like, "Oh my God, do you have feelings for Deku?" Like I don't like that sort of type stuff. That just seems a little, I don't know, immature. Which I mean, they're kids, but if I'm reading a story about high schoolers acting like high schoolers, then I probably just don't want to read that story. I'd like to read a story about people acting better. Go ahead.
I like the whole Deku Ochako ship, and it's pretty cute. I just wish we saw more of it from like Deku's side, because I feel like it's pretty.
Yeah, it is really one-sided.
And obviously, he was like, I don't know. He's in the first like when they first met, he seemed into her, but since then, it seems like he's just content being a friend.
Yeah, if I were to like,
is equally flustered by all girls.
Yeah, if I were to give it like in the span of the entire show, I would say it's like 90-10 ratio of like interest, with 90 being Ochako and 10 being him. But if I were to just do like the past like recent volumes, it would just be 100-0, because it seems like Deku's not. Like, yeah, he's not really reciprocating. It was all a lot earlier on. So those are the standouts, new characters. The big discussion point I want to have with the provisional exams, and this probably be the last thing we talk about before we get into the question of the week and general thoughts, is that all of Class A passed.
Right.
Which is, on one hand, this is to be expected. Like if you were... It's to be expected from a lesser writer, in my opinion. Not necessarily that this was a bad choice, but if I was reading a subpar story, I would predict that everyone's going to pass. And I would just, because this is a better story, I would hope that he thought about, should everyone actually pass? Is there interesting narrative avenues for people not passing? So I kind of want to talk about that with you a little bit. Should any of Class A have failed the test? We gave, and would that have been interesting at all for the story now and then moving forward? Because we obviously saw the moment with Ida. Ida was going around trying to save people. He could have easily passed himself, but he was like, I'm the class president. I need to make sure that my class does well. So he specifically does not finish the test to go around trying to save everyone else. And he gets to,
right.
How do you pronounce his name again?
Aoyama.
He gets to him, and they're trying to work their way out of the situation, and they can't do it. So Aoyama's like, you know what? I'll sacrifice myself. Ida, you have to pass. And we get a little bit of characterization for him. And I was like, you know what? I don't like this character, but if he sacrificed himself here, maybe I would. Maybe if he didn't pass the test and he just had to deal with that, maybe that would give light to who he is as a person, and give us room to expand on his character in the future. Because ultimately that's what I think it is whoever fails this test automatically becomes motivated to do better. Like if they're the only one in their class to have not gotten their license, then they're like, I need to work 10 times as hard to then get this next time and catch up with everyone. So I think a character like that it's sort of like Rock Lee, So I think a character like that is bound to get more of a spotlight because of how hard they're going to work, and I think that is inherently an interesting concept. So I would have very much liked to see Aoyama fail, basically.
That would have been interesting. I certainly would have liked to see someone, actually make like a heroic sacrifice, but at the same time, I kind of understand the idea that like the top school can get through the first exam without anyone, falling by the wayside.
Yeah, ultimately, there is still another exam, so it's possible, but just with what we had now.
And I do like, I would have liked to see someone like... See, I don't want it to be someone like Aoyama or Mineta, someone who we basically already have the idea of being more or less towards the bottom of the class, failing.
Yeah, I did. I was tempted to put Mineta, but I remember a distinct conversation we had. It was like, stop trying to make this character work. It's just not going to happen. So I was like, you know what? You're right. Let's not put this on there. But who I did put was, speaking of Mr. Tailboy, I put Ojiro on there. I would like to see this character have to overcome his inherent flaw of a quirk. Like the fact that this simply is not a strong quirk, to see him then fail because of it, and to see how he overcomes that. Because ultimately, one of the things that I praised Horikoshi on was the fact that he is able to take these simple quirks like Bakugo's explosion and make it into a more complex battle tactic. So if you could take someone like Ojiro and make him into a very intelligent, clever battler, then I think that is a good avenue to take.
Yeah, especially because with Ojiro specifically, Horikoshi, he said something like, this guy just has a tail, but that shows you how good he is for passing the entrance exam. And it's like, does it? Like, or is it just like, how did he get here? So I would have liked to see, you know, the fact that he has a relatively weak quirk in this society play a larger role in his character. I think that's probably an even more interesting idea than what I was thinking, which would be like someone like Yao Momo, which, you know, on second thought, she's probably taken too many licks. She could just win this time.
That's the thing, because I also almost put her down, because I was like, because in the idea of like the person who fails is going to want to work harder, I was like, you know what, it would be nice to see Momo work really hard and come out the other end better, but I don't know if we need to see that. I want to see Momo.
She's lost enough.
I want to see Momo improve. I don't want her to take this L to do it. You know, I just. All right, let's get into close us out here. Let's get into the question of the week. Again, this week's question was, what are your UA mole theories? Let us know your answer in the comment section below. Do you want to start or should I? Because I actually do have one here.
I guess I'll start.
Okay.
Because honestly, I've never like really had a prime suspect for this mole. Like last episode, we discussed a few possible suggestions. I said that Jiro and Hagakure were the likelier suspects because of their limited involvement in the Forest of Death arc.
Yeah.
And I think, as lame as it is, I'm going to have to hold over my Hagakure suggestion.
I hate you. I hate you.
Is this what you were going to say?
No, because I hate this answer.
Well, it's just like, it seems like she actually is the most likely to me, you know?
I get it.
Because
I get it, and you know what? When I was doing research for this, it's you and everyone else. I mean, everyone else is saying her too, and I just hate you all.
Listen, man. I would love for it to be someone like All Might as much as the next guy. But there really aren't a lot of like actually suspicious characters.
Let me give my answer then. So I come at this.
Sure.
I come at this in two aspects, which is one is the theory aspect, which is like, who have we seen so far, and why would they, you know, like what has been shown that maybe might, and that is a lot of the Invisible Girl, you know, theory is like certain things have been played off. But the other aspect I take this is narrative theories, which is like what good is going to happen for the story if this is it, and that's why I really don't like the Invisible Girl theory, because it's like I really don't see how that's cool, you know, like I don't see how that leads to a good story. So I have an answer that satisfies both, but is definitely more in the narrative side. But so my answer is Blood King, which is the teacher of Class B. The theory aspect of it, you know, the sort of like what have we seen, it's fairly simple and isn't like, it is by far not conclusive. But the first invasion in season 1, notably, the villains did not know the students' powers. They did not know, you know, like what the students were capable of, and this led to them having to be very, very careful. Blood
That's
King,
true.
as the teacher of Class B, would not know the students' powers. You know, like if it was, like let's say it was Eraserhead, what is it, Eraserhead?
It is Eraserhead.
Yeah, let's say it was Eraserhead. Eraserhead would have known what these people are capable of. So if he was like a mole, he would have been able to tell the people, they would have been better prepped. But because Blood King, teacher of Class B, he wouldn't have been able to do that as well. So that's the first theory aspect. The second one is that in the training camp invasion, he's not a part of the fight at all. You know, he is locked away in the delinquent room teaching people, and basically is isolated into just protecting them, which is really not even doing anything. So that is like, you know, that's not conclusive. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but that is just a part of the situation. Now, this is neither theory nor narrative theory, but just an observation. His name is Blood King, and he has like blood powers, and I don't know, man, that guy's not a hero.
Yeah, that's evil as fuck.
All right, so here's my narrative, you know, element to this, is that, and I'm going to talk about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., And we talk about season 1, the second half of season 1. So if you haven't seen the show or care about the show at all, then this is a spoiler alert. But honestly, it's not. I like the show, but it's not that good. Don't worry about it. So Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is the TV tie-in to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And, you know, the S.H.I.E.L.D.
That's what they want you to think.
So, yeah, I mean, it's never referenced, but they say it is. So, but the thing is, so season 1 starts pre-Winter Soldier, which is like S.H.I.E.L.D. is this government spy agency. Everything is intact, and it's just, you know, all that good stuff. And then halfway through season 1, Winter Soldier comes out. And in the movie Winter Soldier, S.H.I.E.L.D. blows up. You know, S.H.I.E.L.D. is dismantled. It turns out that there were people in S.H.I.E.L.D. who were agents of Hydra the entire time for like years and years and years, and generations of people in Hydra slowly invading into S.H.I.E.L.D. and manipulating things. And then in Winter Soldier, it all blows up into a huge thing. And this had huge repercussions for the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show. And the show actually became a lot better after this. It became a lot more interesting because of it. But in that, one of the characters on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. turned out to be a part of Hydra. So it is very similar to the situation in My Hero Academia with the mole. It was this guy, it was the second main character, it was the love interest of the main characters, it was her instructor, it was a guy named Grant. And Grant was an accomplished agent, but he also served under another guy named Agent Garrett, who was like his senior. I thought that was really, really interesting. And so I'm thinking Blood King is the guy, right? But also, what if Blood King wasn't the only mole? What if he was sort of training one of the students of his classroom and sort of like bringing him to the side, you know, bringing him to his side? And this sort of lends to the idea of like why the villains thought they could convince Bakugo is because they already have convinced another student. So Blood King, and the obvious choice here is Class B. It has to be the blonde dude. You know, if it's someone else, then maybe. But like, if it's got to be someone in Class B, it's the blonde dude. You know, based on what we know already. So my you know, sort of the workings in my brain is that Blood King has taken this blonde dude, Monoma, whatever his name is, and has sort of turned him to the dark side, and both of them are now sort of working to help the villains. I like this a lot because like I said earlier, Class B hasn't been as developed as I would have wanted them to be for, like, you know, they've been around since the beginning basically at this point, and they just have not gotten as much. They've gotten like glimpses here and there, but they haven't gotten a ton. However, if the teacher of Class B and one of the students of Class B became the bad guys, became moles, then I think that inherently is going to just shift a lot of spotlight onto all of those students, you know? And I think ultimately, I think that is a good thing. So that is my UA mole theory. What do you think?
It's interesting. I've heard some people say that it's less likely to be a teacher. I think it was because something like if a teacher was the mole, then the League of Villains would have known about the raid or something like that. But
what raid?
I don't know.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and also when I was rewatching, or when I was watching the All Might versus All for One fight, there is a shot where like Blood King is watching it on TV, and he's with the other teachers, and he's like reacting like really sad and like, you know, really wanting All Might to win, which could be an act, but the fact that they threw that in there leads me to think that like I don't know, it would seem. It lends to the opposite idea that it's probably not him, but you know that to me that sort of makes me think that this is the best theory I had. You know, like this was like me really putting in the work.
You could have a better one than this.
You know, so I don't know what it is. I mean, in looking up other theories, I did see some stuff about what happens later on that, like, knowing that, I think you could maybe come up with a better theory, because ultimately the time we have between now and then, a lot could change, right? So like a lot could, you know, they could take a character like the Invisible Girl and make her into a more rounded evil, you know, like potentially evil character. And, you know, based on the next 40 chapters, I could be convinced by the end of that. But knowing what we know now, I think the Blood King theory, it for me seems to be like the most interesting. So I don't, if everything stayed the same, I honestly don't know who the mole is. You know, they would need to, I don't know, they would need to make one of the characters and show, it would basically need to be that like nothing we've seen so far has really influenced anything, and it is all going to be within the next couple volumes that it's built on. So I don't know. Anything last for the question of the week?
I do think Blood King is the most interesting choice for anyone out of Class B, because, like you said, we've seen so little of them, and honestly, for some reason, even though it could be a student from Class B, it doesn't really seem like it would be.
Yeah, I mean, because none of them have been, like, at all focused on.
Yeah, and, like, if it was a student from Class B, why would the USJ invasion have been targeting Class A? So,
Well, here's a crazy theory. What if Class B is, like, they're all in on it to, like, they want Class A to die. You know, like, please, just get rid of these guys. I don't want them anymore. You know, it's like, the blonde guy's not even evil.
Is the fucking ringleader. He's the fucking ringleader, dude. Come on.
He's not even evil. He just wants them gone. You know, it's just, he's like, just, you know, it's not like I'm a bad guy now. It's like, no, I'm still a good guy. I want to be the best good guy. You guys are in my way, so I'm going to get rid of you. I'm getting a third phone call from Russia.
Damn, these Ruskies, man. They really want to know what's going on in the Training Arc podcast.
All right. That's the question of the week. Leave your UA mole theories in the comment section below. Again, if you are going to put your spoiler, like if you're going to talk about things later on in the manga, then go ahead and put a spoiler alert. I'll probably still read them, but, you know, just for other people. Now, let's move on to the final section of the podcast. General thoughts on the last 2 volumes. What do you think?
I really like seeing the other schools, but you do raise a good point about the problem that we're probably not going to get to see a lot of these characters again anytime soon, which is sad.
Yeah, I mean, because even if we do, like, it's at the cost of characters we were already introduced to. You know, like, you can't, we can't get everyone here. You know, you can't just keep introducing new characters, you know? So, like, even if we do get this Wind guy, and I'm fully interested in him, that means we don't get some of Class B. You know, unless,
yeah.
it could work. They could come up with a situation, but it's just, there's a lot of narrative obstacles to make that harder. So, yeah.
I mean, overall, 2 good volumes. Like, the All Might All for One fight, obviously iconic, and
it's a little early to call it iconic. I
mean, no, this is a modern day classic. Okay, let me tell you.
Sure.
And the Interhigh stuff is fun, even if it's probably not going to be very consequential. So I'm still enjoying reading it.
What do you mean by Interhigh? Like the license exams?
Yeah, the provisional license. I don't know why I keep calling it the Interhigh in my head. I watch too much sports anime.
Well, because Tanaka from Haikyuu.
You're right.
It's that crossover we were all waiting for. So my
He's
thoughts
on the Shiketsu volleyball team.
My thoughts are, you know, I said we were on the up and up, and I don't think I was wrong, per se, but I didn't like the first volume as much as I liked the previous ones, so while, you know...
there were more filler moments in there. While
in general, we're still on an upward trend, I do think we're a little lower than we were 2 weeks ago when we read those last volumes. For that first volume, but then the second volume, I did end up enjoying. I did like, I did like the new characters we were introduced to, and I did like it was basically like another tournament arc, but it was a little, I thought it was a little more like creative with like what the actual challenge was, and I'm looking forward to see
a battle royale.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see what like the next exam is. It's seems weird. Like, it does not seem cool.
The panel we got was so ominous and bizarre, because just like a bunch of kids and old people standing there really threateningly.
Think about the panel of the beginning to the tournament, the actual tournament arc, and it's how all the Class 1A students marching out in their school uniforms, and it's like, wow, that's so cool, and just recreate that shot, but it's just old dudes with canes and like 5-year-olds. It's like, I guess that's kind of cool, I suppose. So I don't know what the next volume is going to be like. I hope it's good. I hope we stay on the up and up. But so far, I would say for these 2 volumes, I would say the first one, good, not as good as I wanted it to be. The second one I found enjoyable. So those are my general thoughts. Anything last to say before we wrap it up?
I think we've covered it all.
We back, baby. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Training Arc. If you're watching this on YouTube, head on over to patreon.com/KatoYT and consider pledging to get the next episode on Monday. Otherwise, we will see you in a week with the next 2 volumes of My Hero Haikyuu. No, I should have said My Haikyuu Academia. Damn it. Damn it. All right. Bye-bye.